A mother's heart carved out while she was still breathing. An 8-month-old baby pushed onto a freeway during a solar eclipse. 4 family members slaughtered in their pajamas while Halloween candy sat untouched by their door. Behind each horrific headline was a long list of ignored red flags, scattered across social media like breadcrumbs leading to tragedy. Their followers watched in real time as spiritual warfare turned to real violence, and as petty family disputes exploded into bloodshed. While the internet double-tapped their posts, nobody saw, or worse, nobody wanted to see, the darkness brewing behind the screen. These stories will have you questioning humanity. But before we go on, I must warn you, it's about to get graphic and heartbreaking. Danielle Johnson.
We've learned that the suspect in this week's horrific murders was an online astrology influencer. Here's a look at her, who posted about the solar eclipse being the apocalypse.
Let's talk about what happens when the internet's aesthetic of perfectly curated spirituality collides with the brutal reality of mental health stigma. When manifesting good vibes turns into something dark, something real, something that would leave 3 families devastated and force us to question everything we think we know about influence, power, and the price of ignoring red flags. April 8th, 2024, the morning of a solar eclipse. But for the residents of an affluent LA neighborhood, darkness had already fallen. A story was unfolding that would shatter the perfectly filtered world of spiritual influencing forever. This is what happened when Danielle Johnson, known to her 100,000 followers as Mystic X Lipstick, lost her grip on the line between digital fantasy and devastating reality.
A lot of our foundations as a society are toxic. They're ungrounded and they're unrealistic.
Trauma doesn't just go away because you get followers. That's something nobody told 13-year-old Danielle when she watched her mom battle addiction, when she got shipped off to an uncle's house like someone's unwanted package. The message was clear: you're not worth keeping. That kind of wound doesn't heal. It festers, it waits, and sometimes it explodes. Fast forward to 2024. Danielle's not that scared kid anymore. She's transformed herself into a spiritual powerhouse, charging people's bank accounts to charge their crystals. Want your aura cleaned? $2.99. Need your zodiac sign purified? She's got a premium package for that. In an age where everyone's searching for meaning through their screens, Danielle was serving exactly what her followers were hungry for: a connection to something bigger than their daily doom scroll. But she was also posting hateful comments on marginalized groups, such as this one. Sheesh. As you might suspect, her social media accounts were filled with comments asking her to take it down a notch, or if she really sees herself as a spiritual guru with these kinds of beliefs. And when the vibes on Danielle's social media turned dark, they turned dark fast. Danielle's posts started reading like a horror movie script in slow motion. She claimed stuff like NASA launching rockets during the eclipse was a plot for mass mind control. Her feed became a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and apocalyptic warnings, each post more unhinged than the last. She even blamed victims for getting SA-ed, something that attracted a lot of online hate. And then there was Jalen, a 29-year-old Air Force vet who literally chased storms for fun. A guy whose biggest dream was studying the stars because he was a huge Star Wars fan. He probably thought he'd hit the cosmic jackpot when he connected with Danielle. Their love story could have been beautiful. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it became a masterclass in manipulation, with Danielle convincing him they were twin flames, destined souls, even as she isolated him from everyone who truly cared about him.
This type of story is probably one of the most tragic and horrifying stories that we'll ever hear about.
The red flags were literally screaming at this point. Danielle wasn't just posting about spiritual warfare anymore, she was living it. She claimed demons were camping out on her roof like some kind of supernatural security detail. Her perfectly aesthetic apartment turned into chaos. There was garbage everywhere, dishes piling up in all the sinks, and laundry spilling out like the truth she couldn't contain anymore. Danielle had a 9-year-old daughter who hadn't seen the inside of a classroom in a week. She also had a baby daughter who was being seriously neglected, despite Jalen's attempts to make some positive changes around the house. Danielle was isolating herself and her loved ones as she was plotting something terrifying. But in a world where we're all chronically online, sometimes the most obvious cries for help just become part of the content. As the eclipse got closer, Danielle's reality completely unraveled. Her caps lock got stuck on permanent scream. Wake up, the apocalypse is here. Her followers watched in real time as their spiritual guide descended into digital madness. Some DM'd their concerns. Most kept scrolling. No one made the call that could have changed everything. 3:40 a.m., April 8th, the moment everything went from concerning to catastrophic. Neighbors heard arguing. By 4 a.m., Jalen lay dead in their apartment, surrounded by religious objects in some twisted attempt at ritual. A knife was still sticking out of his chest, but the horror was just warming up. Put yourself in her 9-year-old daughter's shoes for a second. You've just witnessed something that's going to require years of therapy, if you're lucky. Now you're trapped in a speeding Porsche Cayenne with your baby sister, watching your mom transform into someone you don't recognize. The 8-month-old baby never stood a chance against against rush hour traffic. The 9-year-old made it to the shoulder, alive but forever changed. And Danielle? She chose her final act, 100 miles per hour straight into a tree in Redondo Beach. Game over.
Then Danielle died after crashing her Porsche into a tree in Redondo Beach.
This became a story about how we're all failing each other in real time. Mental health support exists, but try accessing it when you're busy maintaining your perfect online presence. Social media platforms will flag a copyrighted song in seconds, but let someone's public mental health crisis play out like it's just another story in their feed. Friends, followers, family. Everyone saw the spiral, but no one knew how to grab the emergency brake. Danielle really believed the eclipse would bring the end of the world, and no one believed she meant it.
When you're sitting on TikTok or you're on social media, and clearly she was an influencer, so you know she watched a lot of this stuff, it's very easy to get sucked into the fear that these videos start to create.
Danielle's professional success became her prison, making it too easy to write off concerning behavior as just another quirky brand trait. Every like, every share was another brick in the wall between her and reality. Let's talk about the survivors. Cecil, Danielle's first baby daddy, trying to help his daughter process trauma that would break most adults. Jalen's family, losing a son who loved studying the sky to someone who lost touch with the ground. A baby who never got to experience anything but their mother's final breakdown. These are real people whose lives got shattered because we still haven't figured out how to catch each other when we're falling. This tragedy forces us to ask the hard questions. In an era where we're all living double lives, online and off, who's responsible when someone publicly unravels? How do we separate aesthetic spirituality from dangerous delusion? When does manifestation become manipulation? And who's protecting the vulnerable followers just looking for answers in their Instagram feed? If you're struggling, don't let the pressure to maintain your aesthetic keep you from reaching out. Your real life matters more than your highlight reel. And if you see someone spiral, don't just hit like and keep scrolling. Sometimes being a real one means making the call nobody wants to make, because the next viral tragedy could be preventable, but only if we start seeing each other as humans first, content creators second. Lovich. Behind the filtered photos and carefully curated feeds of social media lies a world that most of us never see. A world where the pursuit of perfection can mask deep trauma, where the line between image and reality becomes dangerously blurred. This is the story of Lovich, a rising Instagram influencer whose picture-perfect life concealed a darkness that would ultimately lead to an unthinkable tragedy. In late 2020, Praskovia Lovich returned home from a business trip, eager to reconnect with her 21-year-old daughter Anna. The reunion should have been a moment of joy. Instead, it would be their last interaction, and that's to put it lightly. It ended with Anna gouging out her mother's heart while she was still alive. Anna seemed to have it all. Born in 1999 to wealthy parents in Moldova, she grew up wanting for nothing. Her father, a successful businessman and former gubernatorial candidate, ensured his daughter and ex-wife maintained a luxurious lifestyle even after the marriage ended. By age 21, Anna had carved out her own space in the digital world, amassing over 14,000 Instagram followers who watched her seemingly charmed life unfold through carefully staged photos and glamorous poolside shots. The perfect Instagram feed was hiding something darker, something toxic, something that would end in unimaginable horror. While Anna's followers double-tapped photos of her med school journey and poolside poses, reality was spiraling into a nightmare. The aspiring doctor who preached health and wellness to her thousands of followers was being consumed by addiction. Every like, every share, every perfectly filtered photo was masking a desperate cry for help. Imagine watching your child disappear into someone you don't recognize anymore. That was Praskovia's reality. The shopping trips turned to silence. The mother-daughter coffee dates became confrontations. The trust they'd built over 2 decades crumbled like a deleted post. After her business trip, Praskovia came home to a stranger wearing her daughter's face. The warm brown eyes that used to light up at her presence now held something cold, something wrong. A mother's love makes you brave. It makes you face the monster hiding behind the screen, behind the smiles, behind the carefully curated content. Praskovia saw the truth that Anna's followers couldn't see, and she made the choice that would cost her everything. She tried to save her daughter. She reached out with rehabilitation, with professional help, with a mother's desperate need to protect her child. She couldn't have known that in trying to save Anna's life, she was sacrificing her own. What happened next shatters everything we think we know about family bonds, about social media, about the thin line between influencer and monster. The kitchen knife in Anna's hands was the final cut between reality and the carefully filtered world she'd created online. Anna stabbed her mother repeatedly as she cried for help, while her mother was still breathing. grieving, still feeling, still processing the ultimate betrayal, Anna did the unthinkable. She carved out her own mother's heart. Let that sink in. The woman who had given her life, who had given her everything, died watching her daughter become something inhuman. But here's where this story gets even darker. For 3 whole days after destroying her mother's body, Anna lived in a parallel universe of her own making. She showered off the blood, changed into clean clothes, went on a date with her boyfriend like it was just another casual Friday. It was this boyfriend who reported Anna to the police. Anna had told him what she'd done, and he thought it was a sick joke. So she took him home to show him her mom's decomposing body with a huge hole in her chest. Now, Anna's ex is haunted by this image every single night. He's also haunted by the thought that he used to date Anna without the faintest clue who she really was. The courtroom should have been Anna's reality check. Instead, it became her final performance. While prosecutors detailed her unspeakable acts, she sprawled on the bench like she was posing for another Instagram shot, picking at her nails, flashing peace signs at the cameras. The disconnect was shocking. A young woman who could transition from taking lives to taking selfies without missing a beat. The perfect influencer smile never cracked, even as the evidence mounted. What makes this case even more bizarre is that Anna had no known history of violence. Her dad couldn't think of anything, and neither could her teachers. She was a little arrogant and self-obsessed, sure, some people in her life would say, but no one feared her before, not her boyfriend, not her closest friends. People were at a loss. We like to think there are red flags for every person that's about to do something crazy. It's a terrifying thought that someone we think we know can turn into a monster in the blink of an eye. The system's response: call it insanity and lock her away in a psychiatric hospital. But that's not justice. That's just another way of hiding the ugly truth. The truth that social media's pressure cooker of perfectionism, combined with untreated mental illness and addiction, can create monsters wearing Valencia filters. The truth that we're all just double tapping our way through a digital minefield, never knowing which perfectly curated feed is hiding a horror story. Praskovia Lovich was a mother who saw past the filters, who tried to reach through the screen and save her daughter from drowning in likes and follows. She died trying to break through the digital wall her daughter had built, trying to prove that real love matters more than virtual validation. Next time you're scrolling through your feed, remember Praskovia. Remember that behind every perfect post, every flawless photo, every carefully crafted caption, there's a real person fighting real battles. Sometimes those battles end in triumph, sometimes they end in tragedy, and sometimes they end in a horror story that shatters everything we thought we knew. Amy Vardi. Picture a small town in South Carolina where family bonds are supposed to be sacred and neighbors still wave from their porches. Now imagine 4 bodies scattered across a double-wide trailer, their blood seeping into carpet that had hosted countless family gatherings.
And I understand, there again, they've got a job to do, but sometimes as family members, we want answers.
Halloween night, 2015. While kids in costumes collected candy across Anderson County, something darker was unfolding in a trailer on Refuge Road. Inside lived 4 people who thought they were safe. 60-year-old Kathy Scott, her husband Mike, and their elderly mothers, 82-year-old Violet Taylor and 80-year-old Barbara Scott. They were about to become victims in a massacre that would haunt South Carolina for nearly a decade. 50 yards away, in another trailer on the same property, lived the person who'd eventually be charged with orchestrating their murders, Amy Vardi, Kathy's own daughter. She'd just gotten married to Ross Vardi a week before. A picture-perfect wedding, they said, the kind where nobody sees the darkness lurking behind the smiles. But you know the thing with small towns, secrets don't stay buried long. Amy and Ross were drowning in debt, their dog grooming business bleeding money faster than they could patch the holes. Their cars were about to be repossessed. They'd written checks they couldn't cash. Meanwhile, Mike Scott, Amy's stepfather, had a side hustle buying and selling gold, keeping stacks of cash wrapped and organized by year, just sitting there in his safe, just waiting. The scene Amy discovered that Monday was something straight out of a nightmare. But let's talk about what the first responders found, because it tells us everything about the kind of rage behind these murders. Mike Scott, taken out first, 6 stab wounds to the neck, no defensive wounds. He never saw it coming. The 2 grandmothers who should have been enjoying their golden years were found in their pajamas, their throats lashed. And Kathy, she made it to the bedroom, maybe trying to reach the gun she kept there. But whoever did this followed her, watched her suffer, then finished her with a knife.
4 members of the same extended family were gunned down inside their home in Pendleton, South Carolina, Halloween night.
This was frenzied overkill, the kind that speaks to something personal, something burning deep. 3 of the victims were shot after they were already dead, like the killer needed to make absolutely sure. Or maybe they just wanted to hear the sound of that .38 caliber revolver echoing through the trailer one more time. For weeks, Amy appeared on TV alongside her husband, saying how much she suffered after finding her family gone in such a gruesome way.
I keep feeling like I should be waking up from a dream right now, and it's just not happening. So yeah, it's like a movie or something.
It was a movie, and Amy was the main character, just like she wanted. She loved the attention she was getting as a victim, and for 8 long years, everyone believed she was a victim. Here's what the cops couldn't ignore, though. Just days after discovering her entire family brutally murdered, Amy was suddenly flush with cash. The same woman who couldn't keep her business afloat was now walking around with nearly $900,000 in bills, wrapped and organized exactly like her dead stepfather used to do it. The signs were there all along. Amy had this thing about control, especially when it came to her kids. She'd use them as weapons against her own mother, cutting off access whenever she wanted to twist the knife a little deeper. There was bad blood there, stemming from when Kathy had to make the impossible choice to take Amy's father off life support. Some wounds never heal, they just fester until they poison everything around them. The investigation revealed layers of family dysfunction that had been simmering for years. Amy, the self-proclaimed wild child, had moved her new husband, Ross, a former Marine with specialized training, into a trailer on her parents' property. But proximity didn't mean peace. The 4th of July, before the murders, everything exploded. Mike and Kathy had taken their grandkids to a church event, coming home to find Amy and Ross wasted. The argument that followed would be the match that lit the fuse. After that, Amy went nuclear. No more visits with the grandkids, no more family dinners. Mike would come begging, hat in hand, just to see the children he and Kathy had helped raise. Amy's response: radio silence, or worse. She'd post passive-aggressive rants on social media, airing the family's dirty laundry for all to see. The money tells its own story. Amy claimed that $900,000 was their life savings, but their business records painted a different picture. They were writing bad checks, dodging creditors. Then suddenly, right after 4 people end up dead, they're paying cash for everything, moving into the big house, remodeling, living large on what prosecutors say was blood money. 8 years. That's how long Amy and Ross thought they'd gotten away with it. 8 years of playing grieving daughter on Facebook, posting about how much she missed her mom while living in the house where her family's blood had soaked into the floorboards. 8 years of trying to sue the cops to get their money back. In December 2023, justice finally caught up.
We have arrested Ross Moore, aka Ross, Wayne Vardi, and Amy Vardi. They are in our custody right now, and they have been charged with murder for the quadruple homicide.
But even behind bars, Amy couldn't help showing her true colors. Guards found shanks in her cell in February 2024. She was overheard saying she'd get out one way or another. The mask was finally slipping, revealing her character in all its ugliness. Well, her 2015 interviews did too.
You were talking directly to the person. Do you want to look in the camera and just say exactly what you would say to that person?
I can't say that on TV.
4 lives ended that Halloween night. 4 people who should have been safe in their own home, murdered allegedly by someone who was supposed to love them. And for what? Some cash in a safe? The ultimate form of family control? TV attention? Or maybe just the final explosion of rage that had been building for years behind a facade of small-town respectability? The trial hasn't finished happened yet. Amy and Ross maintain their innocence. But one thing's crystal clear. On Refuge Road, there was no refuge to be found. Not for Kathy, who just wanted to be a grandmother. Not for Mike, who died never knowing what hit him. And not for 2 elderly women whose final moments were filled with unimaginable terror. In an age of filters and facades, where influencers chase clout and families curate perfect social media moments, it's terrifying to think how far apart someone's online and true personalities can be. Sometimes the most violent acts are committed for fame or followers. Others happen for something far more primal. The intoxicating power of having the whole world watch while you pretend to be the victim of your own story. Thanks for watching, you guys. What are your thoughts on these shocking cases? And can you tell if an influencer you love is genuinely a good person? Leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe before you go. See you soon.